Hey everybody, and welcome back to another severe storm thermal weather forecast. In this forecast, we have a lot to talk about, including a potential tornado outbreak that will impact the southeast tomorrow. So without further ado, let's get right into all of the things you need to know right here. Let's get started by taking a look at the severe weather threat for the daytime hours tomorrow. You can see here as we head in towards early tomorrow morning, 4, 5, 6 a.m., you can see here some thunderstorms coming up from the Gulf of Mexico with that really strong push of southerly flow, pushing a lot of moisture into the Gulf Coast regions. Then as we head later into the morning hours tomorrow, more of that moisture will continue to allow thunderstorms to develop ahead of what we're going to be calling a cold front, and that is likely going to progress into something bigger as we head in towards tomorrow afternoon. You can see here a very big mess of convection, if you will. You can see here across East Texas, we have supercells embedded into a squall line. And over here in the portions of Louisiana and Mississippi, we have a squall line that is basically a bowing segment, which means it has that backward C characteristic. So this will likely be producing some pretty significant wind damage. Meanwhile, you have some supercells isolated down here in the portions of the Baton Rouge region, as well as in the portions of Arkansas, or not Arkansas, I'm sorry guys. Well, we could have some in Arkansas, but over here in Alabama, we could have some as well. So I'm thinking many severe thunderstorm warnings and maybe many tornado warnings for the day tomorrow. So definitely something to keep an eye on for sure, especially those discrete cells as we head in towards tomorrow late afternoon into evening here. You can see around 8 p.m. two squall lines we're watching. Here's one across portions of Alabama and Mississippi, and here's another across Louisiana and Arkansas. All right, this is probably going to be the main show over here in Alabama, but this one is going to be producing some damage too. You can see the embedded bowing segments, and within that, we're going to call this a mesoscale convective system because of those embedded bowing segments in there, aka on those small signatures of backwards C. So definitely something to keep an eye on there. Not a slam dunk forecast, but definitely favorable for some pretty strong damaging winds, as well as a few tornadoes here. You can see those cells ahead of the main line into portions of Louisiana and Mississippi as we head in towards the 8 and 9 p.m. hour tomorrow. Then as we head in towards early Sunday morning, notice we still have a pretty broken line of thunderstorms, still powerful, going on across portions of Georgia, back down into portions of southern Alabama. And these cells right here could be producing some tornadoes because of how isolated they are from the actual line segment. And look, there's that backwards C shape appearing again across portions of Georgia and Tennessee as you head in towards early tomorrow morning. Same thing up here in the portions of Nashville. You have that backwards C formation. So likely some severe weather up there in towards early tomorrow morning for sure. And then as we take this in towards later into the morning hours, at least past daybreak here, you can see 6 and 7 a.m. Another line of thunderstorms gets going here. It begins a full organized line, nothing really discrete as it looks right now. You can see down here we might have a few discrete cells, but they're really not going to be that discrete. They're all really going to be attached to this line here, and that is going to be the main severe weather producer after tonight in towards, or I'm sorry, tomorrow night in towards Sunday morning. And taking a look at our low-level jet energy here, this helps us to determine if we have some wind shear in the atmosphere. And typically when you get a southwesterly or southerly or southeasterly flow, that typically is a pretty favorable tornado environment. So you can see as we advance this in towards tonight, in towards tomorrow morning, you can see here that there's barely any low-level energy. But look what happens as we head in towards tomorrow afternoon and eventually in towards tomorrow evening and the overnight. This low-level jet gets cranking, and you have the storm motion going eastward. All right, you have the cold front going eastward. You have supercells coming up from the Gulf of Mexico. that's going to cause some bumpiness in the atmosphere and therefore cause some wind shear and therefore cause rotation. So we're going to be watching for some pretty strong tornadoes because, well, one, we have some very strong signals that we could have potentially close to 60-knot winds aloft, not at the surface, of course. We could have some with those thunderstorms. You're going to need to watch that. But there is some signal that we could have some pretty strong southwesterly flow along with that perpendicular storm, or I'm sorry, that perpendicular cold front motion. So that is going to cause a lot of wind shear in the atmosphere, meaning this would be an overnight tornado event for areas like East Mississippi as well as West Alabama. So please make sure you have ways of receiving alerts if you live in those areas tomorrow night. And of course, without our low-level jet energy, we have to have instability. So we need to take a look at that instability here. And you can see as we take this in towards tomorrow morning here, you can see that really strong southerly flow, putting that instability into portions of Texas as well as Louisiana. Watch what happens, though, as we head in towards late morning into afternoon, then eventually in towards the overnight hours, all right? Where that strong low-level jet is, remember, the cold front is moving this way, or the dry line, whatever you want to call it, is moving this way, but you got flow out ahead of this, therefore allowing for supercells to soar into the warm sector. So that is a little more complex. So we're going to be talking about some tornado potential, especially where the highest instability rates are, because some of these winds can mix down to the surface. And of course, since we have mixed layer CAPE, we're going to have to put damaging winds in the forecast as well. So I'm seeing two really big threats: damaging winds and tornadoes. All right, we could have a few strong tornadoes indeed with the way things are looking right now. Like I was saying before, with the veering with height, we're likely going to have the storm motion being from south to north and the cold front motion being from west to east. So that is going to allow for some rotation in the atmosphere and therefore tornadoes. So we're going to, I think, have, in my opinion, a pretty big severe weather day for the day tomorrow for tornadoes, if not for damaging winds. Either one of those is going to break out in some shape or form, so be sure you have ways of receiving alerts if you live anywhere in the areas I am talking about for the day tomorrow. Alright, so we know we have a busy day of severe weather tomorrow, as well as through the day on Sunday, but what do we look at beyond New Year's? Alright, beyond the storm system. That's the big question, because as we head in towards the daytime hours on Sunday, notice how this low begins to coop up in the Great Lakes region, allowing for some cold air advection to take place, slamming into the cold front, meaning that would allow for some wintry mix or even some snow, blowing snow at that, to break out on the backside of this, while we will likely still have some pretty gusty showers on the eastern end of this, still lingering in towards early Monday morning. And then as we take this into the day on Monday, notice how we get yet another storm system to develop across portions of the Midwest region. And where this low tracks is starting to become a bit more apparent as we get closer, but some models have it way up here. All right, that would allow for another severe weather event across portions of the Ohio Valley, but this model is trending it a bit further south than previous models, which would allow for rain, cold rain at that, or maybe some snow on the northern end, with a severe weather threat maybe on the southern end. So something to keep an eye on there. Notice what this does as we head in towards New Year's Eve. All right, it's a quick moving system. Notice, though, how the cold air doesn't meet up in time with the low pressure system. Therefore, this model just shows a cold rain on the northern end. However, I want to believe there will be some snow mixing in on the northern end. So something to keep an eye on there, especially for your New Year's Eve plans if you live maybe into portions of the Ohio Valley here. And then as we take this in towards New Year's Day, notice how this low begins to deepen as it moves into the northeast. You can see some pretty cold air with some snow across portions of on the New England regions, back into portions there of Maine. Coastal rain is expected across portions of eastern Maine, while everywhere else can expect snow. So sorry for the coastal areas, snow lovers. You're not going to get anything much from this one. But as we head later in towards the first week of next month, notice how the cold jet stream begins to drop down. And the cold jet stream, in other words, is the polar jet. All right, and you can see here that that's really going to be pouring in. We might be talking about some significant lake effect if we can get enough cold air over our warm lakes across portions of the Great Lakes region, much like we saw in November here. So definitely something to keep a very close eye on there as well. And then as we head in towards January 5th, this is when things start to get interesting. All right, you have a northern piece of energy right here, but you also have a southern piece of energy right here. Do they meet or not? Well, let's find out. Me and you are both looking at this model for the first time. They meet to create a massive snowstorm on January 5th into the 6th for the Ohio Valley back up into portions of the northern plains. All right, so something to keep an eye on there. Severe weather is definitely going to be a problem if this were to happen, which definitely, Lord God, hope this doesn't happen. But if this does come out this way, there will be a severe weather outbreak in Louisiana, Mississippi, and a big snowstorm in Ohio back northward. All right, so definitely something to keep an eye on there as we head in towards that time frame, because we're headed into a much colder, snowier pattern. And then what catches my attention here is the consistency with the model runs. With this storm on January 7th in the Northeast, all right, this would be a blizzard for areas of New England, eastern New York, back into portions of Maine, with a very, very strong band of rain extending southward for the coastal regions, producing possibly some significant wind gusts on shore. So something to keep an eye on there. There's still a lot of uncertainty with this storm system, but have to talk about it from the consistency of the model runs here. And then it appears storm system after storm system. And then always the big question is, do we get the southern stream energy to connect with the northern stream energy? That's the big questions, because if we get the northern stream energy to meet with the southern stream energy, that's when you get those big winter storms and blizzards even across portions of the United States. And it looks like we're going to get a lot of opportunities for that to happen over the course of the next few weeks across the United States. So stay tuned for updates. But for now, guys, that was all for me. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day and stay safe for that severe weather threat down there in the south tomorrow.